Okay, welcome back to the Clark and Miller English podcast. And if this is your first time with us, then just welcome. But you are well and truly welcome. Whoever you are, it's great to have you here, and it's great to have you back. So yeah, I don't really want to talk too much for this intro. There's not much to say, but there is a couple of things I just want to... I always say that and then I talk for ages. And it seems that every podcaster does this. They're always like, yeah, no, I want to make this bit really quick. And then they just talk for like half an hour. But I bet I'm not going to talk for half an hour. But I did just want to talk about a couple of things very quickly. We got some more responses from people about the podcast we did on What Should I Read in English? And I was asking if you had any tips for good books that have helped you with your English. And I got a really good email from Selena McLean, who says... I read Enid Blyton's book at St. Clair's, and this has been so beneficial in my English grammar and vocabularies, and guess what? I wrote a poem. This book has really been a great help, though I'd like to improve better and better. Which is great. Thanks for writing, Selena. And I did ask Selena if she wanted to send the poem, and she hasn't replied yet. So, Selena, if you want to share the poem with us, that would be good. But if not, that's also fine, of course. So yeah, an Enid Blyton book. Enid Blyton, quite old-fashioned, but really good stories, good fun, and simple and direct language. So thanks very much, Selena. And I just wanted to mention that we had a sort of free webinar class last weekend, and I'm kind of still got a lot of energy. I'm still buzzing from that because it went really, really well. And we had a lot of people, and the awesome Cara Leopold from Leo Listening did a free lesson for a whole hour, and then we all hung out afterwards and we had a big question and answer session. And it was just, I just want to say, for those of you who came, it was very, very nice to meet you, and it's just nice. Like, it felt like we've got a community sort of going. So I'm sorry for anyone who couldn't get a place on the webinar. We're going to do more because that did go well. So look out in the future for an email, if you're on our mailing list, an email for telling you about the next one, and then you can hopefully jump in and get a place, secure your place, because we only have a limit of 100 places on our Zoom webinars. If you aren't on the mailing list, then I strongly recommend you join the mailing list so you can get that email, and you get the opportunity to get a free class and hang out with us for a while. It was all really funny, enjoyable, entertaining, and it just makes me happy that we got such a nice group of supportive, friendly, and actually quite funny people joining the community. So for those who came, thanks very much. For those who couldn't make it, I'm sorry, but we'll have more, and better luck next time. So yeah, today, what are we talking about? Well, I just want to talk very quickly. I'm not going to use that phrase again very quickly. I'm going to talk about how we're not free. We have no freedom, and how that's actually good and can really help us with our English. A controversial concept in the 21st century, lack of freedom. But of course, I'm not talking about political freedom. I'm talking about language freedom. So yeah, and I'm going to talk about how communication is a bit like airport security, and why a lot of conversations we have are a lot like the film Borat and not so much like the film Lord of the Rings. None of this will make sense to you right now, so go ahead and listen. It's a short one today, just half an hour, and hopefully everything will become clear in half an hour. So yeah, good luck. On with the podcast. Terrible, terrible news. You are not free. Freedom is an illusion. Okay, right, let's think about this. Strong claims here. Okay, so obviously I'm talking about your freedom with language. We are not free to say whatever we want whenever we want. And I'm not talking about saying, things that might annoy or upset people. I mean, we're very, very limited in our options when we're speaking and when we're communicating in any language. So what do I mean? What am I talking about? Okay, well, think about it like this. When you meet someone for the first time, what do you say? I bet it's one of just a few of these phrases. You'll say, nice to meet you, or hi, I'm Chad, if your name's Chad, or what's up, Gabe, you, if you're in a very informal situation and your name's Gabe, like mine. But beyond that, there isn't much else we can say. We're super limited, right? We wouldn't say, I don't know, pink bananas are everywhere, or your hand's all sticky, even if their hand is sticky. Or to take a less mad example, you wouldn't say, I'm much obliged to be meeting your acquaintance. That would be really weird, right? To say something like that. Why can't we say these things? Aren't we free people? Didn't we decide that we were all free and everything was democratic? Why can't we say these things? Well, these examples, they're inappropriate, right? And why are they inappropriate? What makes them inappropriate? Why can't we say, I'm much obliged to be meeting your acquaintance, instead of how are you, or nice to meet you? Well, think about it like this. Meeting people, it's kind of political, right? I mean, we all live in a society, and meeting someone for the first time is basically like a little act of diplomacy. When you meet someone for the first time, you are the ambassador of you. And you represent the interests of you, and you're always seeking to establish and build good relationships with other people. You're like an ambassador. Humans are social animals, and that's basically what happens. We want to make ourselves appear nice, friendly, an ally, not an enemy. So we have a script, a very tight script that everyone follows and that we use to do our diplomatic duties as representatives of the sovereign nation of us. So if you say something off script when you meet someone for the first time, you're either taking a risk, which might work out, or you might even be being downright hostile, like actually hostile, like kind of aggressive. People expect you to follow the script, right? And, if it's a risk, sometimes it pays off. Some people think, oh, he's a funny guy. Look at him. He's not following the script. But also, they might just think you're being hostile, and that's not good diplomatic relations. So, yeah, looking at our sort of meeting people for the first time example, if you don't stick to this hello, how are you? My name's blah, blah, blah script, what happens? Like, let's say you meet someone for the first time, they extend their hand, ready to shake your hands. You can even see their mouth form the first shape of the sound hello. And instead of saying hello or hi or nice to meet you or hey or whatever, anything from this script, you say, whoa, that film, Mulholland Drive. Yeah, you see it. What a film. Crazy film. Oh, so good, right? Really confusing though. If you meet someone for the first time and you say this, you're either going to be labeled as an eccentric, in the best case, which isn't that bad, I suppose, but you might also be labeled as being an uncooperative person, and maybe even like egocentric and egotistical, arrogant. It depends. A lot of this is very cultural, of course, and it relies on context, but we have this script, and when we don't stick to the script, bad things can happen. The script gives us a safe way to meet people and establish relationships. And it can even be extended. You do the hello, how are you stuff, and then you go on to doing weather stuff. Weather's quite common. You might say nice weather, or you might say, I like your shoes, or you might say something like, I heard you're into Star Wars. What did you think of the new films? And, okay, fine. We've finished the script of hello, how are you? And we're in a new zone. And this feels like an individual freely chosen follow-up, a choice. But it's not really. Like, you could, if you wanted to draw a flowchart, with a box at the top with hello, how are you, my name is, and then a few boxes with possible follow-ups. If you've just met someone for the first time, there are not going to be many boxes there. You'll have to talk about the weather. You can compliment the other person, find something you have in common. We're very, very limited when we're in this very tight diplomatic situation. Again, this is a vast generalization. Different contexts are more free than others, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But you see what I'm getting at here? We're kind of limited in our interactions when we first meet people, and our language reflects that. If we're talking about the weather, for example, there's a very limited number of phrases we can use. Basically, we're stuck with something like, nice weather, right? Or, oh, I wish it would stop raining all the time. Or, hot summer this year, isn't it? And really, 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 you're really kind of a slave to this script. You have a topic and there's just a handful of things you can say. You can't just say something like, rain bad, or the weather is not pleasing at this time, or sky water, huh? Or the meteorological condition sucks at the moment. All of these are possible, right? And that last one is kind of funny because it's combining sort of formal and informal. It is quite a funny thing to say, but it's off script. If you speak like this all the time, someone might punch you. Again, they're all inappropriate. They're not incorrect. In theory, all of these sentences are possible in English. There's nothing grammatically wrong with them. There's nothing semantically wrong with them. I mean, in terms of the meaning is being conveyed, but they're weird. They're not part of the script. Again, we can play with this a little bit. You might want to introduce humor or irony by saying nice weather on a really bad day, for a joke. That's funny for some people. Or you might speak in an amusingly unnatural way, the meteorological condition sucks at the moment. That's just a very strange way of expressing it. And, you could be doing this for a joke. You might want to sound eccentric. Usually we say rain, not precipitation, for example. Precipitation is just another word for rain. But, when you meet someone who uses precipitation instead of rain, they're kind of marking themselves as a bit different and a bit eccentric. And that's great. Language is very powerful, and that's a good way of using it in a powerful way. But generally speaking, people are most comfortable when we stick to the script. It kind of can be a bit pretentious, for example, to use precipitation instead of rain. And it really just comes down to some very, very simple things sometimes, like rain versus precipitation. We often say it's rainy or it's raining, but we don't usually say there's rain. We say it's cold, but not so common to hear the weather is cold. We say it's really windy more than we say the wind is very strong. And that's just the way things are. All of these sentences are possible, but there's one or two examples from each of the sets I gave you just now that are on the script. It's just the script is what we do. And we see this all over English. Here's the thing. Okay, so let's look at why. What's going on here? What's the sort of linguistic explanation for this? Obviously, it's not grammar or vocabulary here. This is something a bit more complex, right? So when we're using language, when we're communicating with another person, what we choose to say, which words we use, are all about what the other person expects us to say. It's about expectations. The most efficient communication comes from making life easier for the other person to process the sounds you make into meaning. So think about it like this. When you say something, when you're speaking, what exactly is it that you're doing? You're making an abstract combination of air and mouth sounds. That's what I'm doing right now. This is all just sound waves generated by my breath and by my moving my mouth around. And the person you're speaking to needs to hear that abstract mess and decode it into meaning. They need to take this air and mouth sound, basically, and turn it into meaning, transform it into meaning. And, this takes brain power. This takes effort. But because humans are pretty awesome, we're very cooperative animals, and we try to make things easier for each other, so our communication is better and stronger. So we try to say the same things in particular situations. We try to have a common pool, a common bank of phrases that we have just for particular situations, so that it's easier for the other person to predict what you're going to say. They can start guessing what you're going to say and start preparing for it. And this makes it a lot easier on the brain. Like when you're meeting someone for the first time, you're ready for things like pleased to meet you or hi, my name's Chad. If you're talking about the weather, you are expecting things like, oh yeah, it's snowy or it's cold. And it's not just because of the topic. You're not expecting precipitation is likely. You're expecting, I think it's going to rain. If you hear precipitation is likely, you have to use more brain power. I imagine it like airport security. When you go to the airport, wow, remember airports? It's been a long time, huh? When you go to the airport, you have these really long queues for security, right? And that's just probably the most boring part of the whole the travel experience. And in some airports, if you pay a little extra, it's like £5 in the UK, you get to jump the queue. You get to go to the front. You get a sort of pass card, and you go straight to the front. You show the card, and they put you through security immediately. And yeah, this is the same thing with language. In specific situations, we're expecting to hear specific sentences. These sentences come with the pass card to the airport security of your brain. There you go. How's that for a metaphor? So, hi, how are you is a pass card sentence or a pass card phrase. But, my God, meeting people like this is something we do a lot and I'm happy about this one. That is not a pass card sentence. When you say a pass card sentence, pass card phrase, when you use a pass card phrase, the person you're speaking to recognizes it immediately. That's what makes it a pass card phrase. The sentence arrives in their ear into the brain, which says, yes, we were expecting you. No need to join the queue of decoding information. And it passes through quickly. No stress, no effort. And that's why we have the script. That's what the script is. When we can predict what's going to happen, we can react to it quicker. And then our communication is better. So when we're waiting for it's snowy or it's cold today, when we get snow has fallen, or cold, big, white things are falling from the sky, or the temperature is low today, unusual sentences, we have to stop. These sentences don't have a pass card to the security airport of your brain. Your brain doesn't recognize them, so it has to make them queue up so it can decode them. And this takes effort. This is, by the way, one of the reasons learning a new language can make you tired. You ever get those situations? It happens to us all when we're communicating in a second language and, you're fine for an hour, maybe two, and then you just get tired. It just becomes really tiring. And that's partly because we're not used to the script. So we're decoding all the time. We haven't got these pass cards. So we have things queuing up in that security line in our brain. And doing more work. And okay, so in the examples so far, we've just talked about introductions and small talk. These are very tightly scripted examples. These scripts are very, very well established, and they're very tight. And they're usually with strangers or people you don't know very well. Diplomatic relations haven't been established, so we play it safe. And we use the script. As we become more familiar with people and the people we're talking to, that's when our language starts to change. So do you remember I said that our language choices are based on what the other person knows, what the person we're speaking to knows, or what we think they know. So when you know someone better, your shared knowledge is bigger and your language changes to reflect that. and that means your script changes. So, yeah, I want you to imagine like a line, a spectrum. On one side of the line, you've got a film like Lord of the Rings. Yes, I'm bringing film metaphors in now. We've done the airport metaphor. It's time for film metaphors. So yeah, you've got a line, and on one side of the line, you've got Lord of the Rings. Right, that film, it had a very tight script. There was almost no space for improvising. Every line had to be delivered as it was on the script, the actual paper given to the actors. And they had to learn each pause, each cue, each line, and each movement. It was all very, very tightly coordinated. There was some improvisation going on from time to time. I think all films end up with a few improvised lines. And that's fine, that can happen. But generally speaking, very, very tightly controlled, sticking to the script. On the other side of the line, you have a film like Borat. You've seen Borat, right? The Sacha Baron Cohen film. I think there was a new one out recently. Weird stuff. Whether you like it or not, this can illustrate the other side of the line, because with Borat, there was almost no script. They had some idea about where they were in each scene, the situation, the context. They knew what the characters' goals were in each scene. They knew how it would play out, and they often knew how it would end. And they probably even had some lines of dialogue that they definitely wanted to include, things they were expecting to have. There was some sort of structure going on, but it was basically improvised. And one of the reasons they could do that so well was because the actors knew each other really well. They obviously worked really well with each other, and they could improvise scenes together and make it seem real. So on the Lord of the Rings side, you've got your highly diplomatic conversations, the hello, how are you, nice weather, we're having stuff, to compare it with the sort of language scripts. It's tightly scripted, just like some actors would have improvised a few lines here and there. Famous examples of improvised lines are, what's that film? The Shining, Jack Nicholson's famous line, "Here's Johnny." That was improvised, apparently, according to the internet. And that terrible, awful film from the 90s called Titanic that sadly too many people enjoyed. There was a very famous line of that when they're standing at the front of the ship and Leonardo DiCaprio goes, "King of the world." And apparently that was improvised too. So you do get the odd improvised line in these films, and some actors would have improvised some lines. Even in the hello, how are you situations, we do have some freedoms on how we want to introduce ourselves. But in these situations, we're not really that free. We have to follow the script to some degree. On the Borat side, you're speaking to an old friend or a long-time colleague or your partner or just someone you know really well. And that's the sort of Borat side, like the way that the actors in Borat know each other so well that they can really improvise around each other. And that's when the script gets looser. Have you ever listened to a conversation between two people who know each other really well? It's pretty difficult to understand what's going on, right? They refer to things and experiences you don't know about. One person just might say the word cashew, and they'll just both start laughing. This way, that language works between people who are close, can be really, really well used in drama and comedy. In my favorite sitcom, Peep Show, we have a situation with Mark, who doesn't want to talk about the emotional family problems, and his sister, who just wants to talk about the emotional family problems. And they're in a pub, and she's trying to get him to speak about all the problems and all the stress and all the anxiety about their family, kind of therapy vibe. And he's just trying to find distractions. So he says, "Oh, look, they have jumbo cashews now. Cashew nuts, jumbo cashews." And Sarah, his sister, says, "All the stuff that went on at Grange Terrace before the move, get it all out, because it's so hard when you're trying to work through this family stuff on your own, isn't it?" That line, "all the stuff that went on at Grange Terrace before the move," She refers to a street, Grange Terrace, and a time before the move, and simply that mad stuff happened, all that stuff. We never find out what she's talking about, but just making those passcard-like references makes us imagine what's going on here. 3 passcards here. Or no, 2. Grange Terrace, before the move. So these are two passcards that show lots and lots of information. In fact, yes, so what's going on here, we don't know, but it gives us so much to think about because we start imagining a place and a time just before a family's moving and some sort of terrible family stuff that happened. So yeah, this was a good example of the way language changes when 2 people who are close to each other, or at least trying to be close to each other, like Mark and Sarah, 2 people who know each other really well, start speaking. And yeah, there are lots of interesting things that happen to our language when we speak to people who we know very well. The script gets looser. And here are some examples. I want to talk about a few examples here. You've got substitution, like where shall I put this? Or where shall I put the thing? And, the thing can just mean something that the other person knows what you're talking about. Or, have you got any more of that stuff? Now, that means nothing by itself, but in context, the other person probably will understand. Otherwise, why did the first person just say that stuff? So we have this sort of substitution and this sort of being vague there. And there are also sort of in-jokes. In-jokes are jokes that have developed, not so much developed, have kind of de-developed. You have a joke between 2 or 3 people, and to refer to the joke, you just need to say a thing, like one thing or one word. Yeah, I think I mentioned in another podcast, I've got a friend who sometimes gets quite angry with waiters. And, if I'm at a restaurant with her and it looks like there might be a situation with the waiter, I have to say to her, like, yeah, don't do the thing. Don't do the thing. And we both know what the thing means. The thing means getting angry at the waiter. There's another thing with my brother. All I have to do is say, we're both remembering something really funny that happened during our childhood. We just say that pig and we can start laughing. You also have like weird and personalized humor. Again, I'm going to talk about things my brother says because, he's a funny guy. And, whenever there's like, we were talking and then suddenly there's lots of noise, so we can't talk anymore, like some sort of alarm, car alarm goes off or someone's drilling next door. He always starts, pretending to speak, but there's no sound. And then as soon as the noise stops, he says, until he needed a handle to get it out. Just as if he's finishing a whole, monologue. That sort of thing that only happens when you have 2 people who know each other really well. Finally, you also get a lot of cultural references. If I'm speaking to someone I know is really into Star Wars, for example, I might just say, "May the Force be with you," when they're going to do something, or when I'm just leaving them, or just saying hi, even. And that's fine. But if they don't know what Star Wars is, that's a very strange thing to say. You can also, again, if you know someone's a fan of Back to the Future, which I am, when you're saying something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, no, you can't do that with that program unless you have power," and that line is from Back to the Future too, and it would sound very strange if you hear someone say, "Oh yeah, you can't do that with that software unless you have power." Very strange thing to say, unless you've seen Back to the Future too. So again, these are the sorts of things. These are the sorts of ways that we can manipulate the script. But there is always a script of some sort. I want to leave you with some examples of classic call and response phrases. We're very, very trained in the way that we communicate with each other. And that's good. It's always a good thing. The fact that we're not free here is a good thing. It means that we we have a sort of guideline that we can look at when learning English, and it makes it easier to know what to say in certain situations. I know it's not a very popular thing in 2021 to say we're not free. And this whole free will thing is a major part of our society at the moment. But with language, we're not, but that's good. It actually makes us it empowers us. It gives us something to follow. I want to leave you with some examples of classic sort of call and response phrases that demand a specific response or a similar sort of response. So we've got things like one person A says, "You won't believe who I saw." And person B is automatic. You just say, "Who?" or "No, who?" You won't believe blah, blah, blah. You won't believe who, or you won't believe what. This phrase demands the answer, who. It means tell me. Or what about got it? Got it. Person A says got it. That's a question. Person B is expected to say got it. This is a call and response. Or simply if someone's complaining about something and says, "Oh no, it sucks. Work really, really sucks. Work is terrible at the moment." It's just completely normal to expect something like, "Sorry to hear that, mate," or "I'm sorry," or "Yes, that's rubbish." There are, like I said, like with a script, there really are only a few things you can really respond with to that phrase. I mean, I was just trying to think of what I would say to somebody who says, "Oh, work sucks at the moment." Really sorry to hear that is pretty much one of that, and like 2 or 3 others are the only ones I can think of. And yeah, this is good. This means that our choices are limited, and that means there's less to learn. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to create brand new things for different situations. One more example of this kind of thing is not exactly the same, but it is related. Scripts and the way that we communicate with each other, this all is different between cultures. And I've noticed with some students, particularly from Japan and Turkey as well, possibly more. I think it's very polite in those languages or in those cultures when you want to show that you're listening to someone by repeating them. Repeating some of the things they said. So, I would say something like, yes, I was a bit late because, the boat ran late because of the weather. And then the person I was speaking to would say, "Oh, because of the weather." And I think for them, that's a very polite way of indicating that they're listening. But for me, it makes me stop and I have to sort of I have to process what's going on here. It's like, this doesn't have a passcard. It has a passcard in their culture, but it doesn't have a passcard in my head or the way I'm used to speaking. So that goes to the airport security queue, and it has to be processed by my brain, and it slows things down. When I'm used to communicating with people, what I do is, to show I'm listening, is just say things like "yeah" or "uh-huh," "mm-hmm," stuff like that. But again, this is all kind of culturally specific. But one way or another, there is a script behind everything. So, what to do about that? Good question. Good imaginary question from an imaginary person. When you're reading in English, or watching a film, or sitting on a bus listening to people having a conversation, or just encountering English wherever, pay attention to the script. Stop thinking about the grammar and stuff. Just think about it in terms of the script. Notice that people say things according to what is expected, to sort of help them predict things. It's like a dance, and it's not quite as free as you might think. This isn't a science. The script is always going to be somewhat improvisational, but it's there. That structure, that dance, that script. When communicating in any language, we do the dance. We collect passcards. Yeah, that's it. Think about it like this. Learning a language, one major part of learning a language is collecting passcards. So you can say stuff at the right time that makes things easier for the other person. Things that they're expecting. And the better we know people, the more we become like Borat and the less like Lord of the Rings. The more you understand the script, the more passcards you collect the stronger you'll get at communicating. And that's it. Like, think of language in a way of collecting passcards. Yeah. So, good luck. Thanks very much for listening. And really, I don't think I have anything to add. But if you have any questions about any of the ideas that I talked about today, especially if you disagree. I like it when people disagree. We get a good conversation going. Especially if you disagree. Right. Let me know. And I'll mention your emails and messages on the next podcast episode. So it's Gabriel@clarkandmiller.com. Gabriel@clarkandmiller.com. Thanks very much for listening. It's always a pleasure, and I will talk it to you in 2 weeks. But ciao for now.